Welcome back to a special edition of the One Pride Report, where we go over all 32 teams' rosters heading into the 2020 NFL season, an entirely new decade of NFL football. And we have you covered here on 87.9 Sports Talk. So what I'm going to do, while you can see the roster scrolling across the screen, I'm basically going to give you an outlook kind of on every team in the NFL. So for example, we'll start out with Bear X Cuddles' Chicago Bears. And the Bears, they underachieved last year. They were 6-10 and they underachieved. They were supposed to be kind of like the Lions. In fact, they were like a game worse than the Lions for the past 3 years. And you thought that the Bears would be able to take the next step with their head coach Rob Boris, and they weren't able to do so. And that's a tough break for them. We'll see if they're able to get back on track this year, although they have a lot less injuries this year. Unfortunately, Eddie Goldman is out for the year with a torn pectoral, so that's a big blow. But they have a lot less injuries in the preseason this year than they had last year, so hopefully they can stay more healthy, and hopefully they don't beat the Lions in Soldier Field again. But anyways, the Bears, I think they're definitely going to be some tough competition in the NFC North. You can bet on that. And I think that they will bounce back this year, probably go 8-8, 9-7. Now looking at the Cincinnati Bengals, they were 5-11 last season, but they did draft DeAndre Francois in the third round, just in case if Andy Dalton is regressing, so he can be the future solution maybe for the Bengals at quarterback. But the Bengals, again, as I said, 5-11 last season. That's pretty bad, especially with the franchise quarterback like Andy Dalton on roster. You don't want to go 5-11 and have that bad of a season. But I do think the Bengals have potential to bounce back. Although they had a lot of injuries last season, and with more players healthy, with more talent on the roster, they had an okay draft, I guess you could say. But I do think that the Bengals definitely will improve on their 5-11 record. How much, I don't know, because the division is very tough. We know how good the Ravens are. The Steelers are a very good team in their own right. Even the Browns are some tough competition. But the first round pick was spent on Jeffrey Okudah. He should definitely be an upgrade in the secondary. And we'll see if the Bengals are able to turn things around in 2020. Next up, we go to the Super Bowl runner-ups, the Buffalo Bills. Great year last year. Unfortunately, they lost Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, and they definitely could have used him in the Super Bowl. Tyrod Taylor just did not know what he was doing in the Super Bowl. The moment was just too big for him. And for Buffalo, the goal is to get back. They're 0-5 in Super Bowls. They just want to win one. They just want to win one Super Bowl. That's all they want. Give them one Super Bowl. I don't know if they'll be able to get it this year. The AFC is very tough competition. The Ravens, as I said, they're going to be a very good team for years to come. The Steelers as well, they're going to be a very good team for years to come. They got some tough competition in the AFC. Even the Jaguars. The Jaguars are a good team in their own right. I don't know how well Buffalo's going to do. I'm going to predict about 10-6 for them. I do think they'll be able to conquer the AFC East, though, because the Patriots are simply not as good as they used to be anymore. Now looking at the Denver Broncos. Last year, they were 6-2 heading into their matchup against the Detroit Lions. Then what they do? Well, they lost Kyle Allen for the season. And after that, they went on a complete tailspin. They were 2-6. So this year, they brought in Ryan Tannehill as a backup, who was a cap casualty from the Miami Dolphins. And in case Kyle Allen goes down, they at least have a serviceable backup that won't throw 17 interceptions in 8 games. So they have a lot of key playmakers on the offense, although the offensive line, the Broncos are still working on rebuilding that a little bit more. You see they invested a first-round pick in Foster Sarell, invested a first-round pick in Pat Elflein way back in 2017. But this is a Broncos team that has potential. They've kind of addressed their defensive needs. Von Miller's still around, and Oliver has developed into a stud on offense. Christian Kirk is very explosive. But the secondary may be a little bit of a concern with no more Aqib Talib and Chris Harris getting up there in age. I do think the Broncos, though, will go about 8-8, 9-7 again this season. Not a playoff worthy roster to me. Now, the Cleveland Browns are a team that I think can surprise. Deshaun Watson, the former number 1 overall pick, is entering a contract season, and I think he's going to have to play his butt off. He and Hugh Jackson are going to have to play their butts off because both of them are on extremely hot seats. The Browns were 9-7 last season, a game out of playoff contention. In fact, they were tied with the Ravens at 9-7, but the Ravens got the tiebreaker. They got into the playoffs, which is a tough break for Cleveland, but I definitely think that the Browns have a very solid roster, and they've been underachieving quite a bit. I think this has to be the year. This is the year. If there's any year for the Browns to go to the playoffs with Deshaun Watson, it's going to be this one. And if the Browns don't go to the playoffs, expect them to blow things up and expect Deshaun Watson to be on a new team next season, because that's what the Browns do. Alright, so the next team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who the Detroit Lions will be facing week 1. The Bucs had a 5-11 season last season, very disappointing. Another tough year with Jameis Winston at the helm, so they can Dirk Cutter. Dirk Cutter is gone. Now you can say goodbye to him. They also do have Devin Allen on the roster. We'll see if he drops huge passes in week 1 like he did for Flemlo Raps. But anyways, the Bucs, you don't know what you're going to get out of them. Last year, I think, 2018, they were 8-8. They were on the brink of making the playoffs. They were 8-7-1, because they tied week 1. But they were on the brink of making the playoffs before they choked it away week 17. And then this year, they just completely bottomed out, 5-11. Sorry, there's going to be moments in this video where I cannot speak, but I think that the Bucs are able to rebound a little bit this year. Maybe go about 10-6, make the playoffs as a wild card. Now the Arizona Cardinals, who happened to make an interesting signing in the offseason, bringing in Eli. Eli just simply did not get the hit that he needed to retire, so unfortunately he will not retire as a New York Giant. Now for the Cardinals, they were 8-3 last season, and then they lost their starting quarterback Luke Falk for the year, and their season went down the toilet. After that, they had clowns like John Kolar and Bryce Petty starting games for them, and you know how that went. Cardinals lost 5 straight games to end the year, and they missed the playoffs. So their number one goal this year has got to be to keep Luke Falk healthy. And even Luke Falk wasn't that good last season, but at least he was winning games. So they got to keep Luke Falk healthy, but unfortunately, as you saw earlier, Larry Tunsil is gone for a significant portion of the early part of the year with a foot fracture, which is an unfortunate break for Arizona. But they do have insurance in case Luke Falk goes down and Eli Manning. I do think the Cardinals will be able to sneak in the playoffs this season. Next team up is the Los Angeles Chargers here. And at quarterback, they did draft Baby Snooze, as Philip Rivers is now 30 years old. Snooze is definitely going to be filling that role for the Chargers as the franchise quarterback in the years to come. Chargers were 8-8 last season. And a big reason why is they started out the year way too poorly. But at least for them, they do have a good offensive line, which is something Mr. Hurricanes Chargers cannot say. But the Chargers have invested numerous picks into the offensive line and developing that up for Philip Rivers, and Rivers probably only has 1 or 2 more years left in him at this point before he decides to hang it up here. But I think the Chargers, they know that Philip Rivers has a limited window of opportunity left to go to the playoffs. I think that they're going to be able to bounce back this year and get back into the playoffs. How far they go, I can't answer you that question. Now on to the Kansas City Chiefs here with Matthew Stafford at quarterback. The Chiefs snuck into the playoffs at 9-7 last season, but of course they lost Matthew Stafford and Cody Kessler to injuries in week 16, so they were stuck with Mike Glennon at quarterback in the playoffs, and we all know how that went, which is a very unfortunate break for the Chiefs. Unfortunately, they also lost Jeb Blazevich in the preseason to a torn ACL. That is a very, very, very tough break. But for Kansas City, they lost a lot in free agency. They lost Jeremy Maclin. They've lost some other players. And I have a bad feeling about the Chiefs this year. I think they're going to really underachieve. I'm not just holding a grudge against Matthew Stafford. I think they're going to go 6-10 this year. I do. I just think they're going to underachieve. Their secondary is questionable at best. I think they will underachieve and miss the playoffs, which would be a tough break for Matthew Stafford in Kansas City. The next team we'll take a look at is the Indianapolis Colts. And the Colts were coming off a 2018 season that saw them win a Super Bowl, their first one since 2006, Andrew Luck's first ring. But they went 8-8 this past season, and what happened? Well, Andrew Luck was sacked a league high 69 times. And to address that, the Colts went out and they drafted Trey Smith, number 10 overall. And also their defense, they kind of regressed as well. They have Derek Barnett and Cameron Smith, but that's really the whole defense when you're completely honest. Cleo McKenzie is not developed at all. Vontae Davis is old at this point. And I'm not sure if Indy is going to be able to get back to the playoffs in the 2020 season. Now, next up, we're going to look at the Dallas Cowboys here. So the Cowboys had a bit of a weird season. They started out 4-0. And then Dak Prescott was injured, so they had to go to RG3. He was now with the Seahawks, and the backup is now Josh Allen in Dallas. But the Cowboys lost 5 straight games, including that 34-10 bludgeoning they took to the Lions. Then Dallas went out. They won their final 6 games. They went 10-6, only to lose to Carolina in the divisional round, wildcard round of the playoffs. So Dallas is an interesting team. They're very talented. They still have the best offensive line in the league. They have a talented defense. If Dak Prescott can stay healthy, Dallas is definitely going to be a threat in the NFC East. As good as the Redskins, I don't know quite yet. But they have a very dynamic offense. Even with Dez Bryant injured, they have a slew of good receivers. Their one concern, though, that secondary. Justin Gilbert as the nickel corner, that's not good at all. But Dallas will definitely be a threat in the NFC. Next up, the Miami Dolphins, who are bringing in the official Shea Patterson era with JT Barrett as his backup. Now, the Dolphins started out the year 4-1. They were the first team to beat the Cowboys, but then things took a massive turn for the worse as they went 5-11. Overall that season. They only won 1 of their last 11 games. So they had a terrible second half of the season. They entered the offseason with negative $29 million in cap room, but they were able to work things out. They had to release quite a few players that were bad, but were taking up a crap ton of cap. So they cut those guys, they cut the dead weight, and I definitely think we're going to see an improved Miami team. Now, this is not a Miami team I think that will be going to the postseason or anywhere close, but their important goal is for the development of Shea Patterson. Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles, another team that regressed. They were in the playoffs last season before they took a bludgeoning to the Cowboys at home. And then this past season, they went 6-10. Carson Wentz he's developed into the quarterback that I originally thought he would be coming out of the 2016 draft, as a mediocre one. And he has not been able to take the next step necessarily. Granted, the Eagles don't have the best receivers around him. They don't have the best halfback around him, but still, eventually, he's got to play better than he has been. And I think that this is a contract year for Carson Wentz. He was in fact handed the franchise tag. We'll see if Wentz is able to pick up his play, because as the Eagles will go as far as Carson Wentz will take them. That's pretty clear at this juncture. So the 2020 season will be all about having Carson Wentz pick up his play. So now we're on to the next team, that being the Atlanta Falcons, who underachieved yet again last season. Another 7-9 here. Matt Ryan had his worst season of his career, so the Falcons drafted Davis Mills to be his heir apparent. Fortunately, the replacement for Tevin Coleman, Kenny Drake, is already out for the season. They're down to Jordan Scarlett and Jeremy McNichols at halfback. They did sign Jeremy Maclin. They have Ryan Switzer. Look at those ratings, dude. Ryan Switzer is a freaking monster. We all know that. But for the Falcons, Dan Quinn is on the hot seat. Matt Ryan himself was handed a franchise tag, so he's on the hot seat. If he craps out this year, he and Dan Quinn will be shown the door, and that is for sure. Atlanta simply cannot have these mediocre seasons year after year after year. They have to do something. They have some talent on this team. You can see TJ Watt, he's a monster. Big Beasley has developed into a dominating pass rusher. Desmond Trufant is good, but the rest of the secondary, pretty bad. I'd say mediocre at best, but their safety's very good. Atlanta, they need to get their crap together. Will they? I can't tell you that. So now we're on to the next team, that being the San Francisco 49ers. They finally dumped Chip Kelly. They begin a new era with Kyle Shanahan, the former Falcons offensive coordinator, as their head coach. He brought in Kirk Cousins, who he identified as his dude. And Cousins does have some weapons to throw to. This Chip Kelly was able to build the 49ers up to a mediocre level, I guess you could say. He's gone 8-8, 7-9 the past 2 seasons. So this is actually a solid team at this point. You know, the 49ers have used the picks they got from the Josh Rosen trade wisely, but I'm pretty sure at this point they would prefer Josh Rosen than having all these draft picks and still looking for a franchise quarterback. But as you can see, Myles Garrett is a freaking monster, and he is going to be a problem for Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, and Luke Falk to deal with. But the 49ers defense is decent. I don't know how well the team will be. They seem like they're going to be mediocre yet again. Looking at the New York Giants. The Giants, these past couple of years, have really regressed. It's Jake Browning era, though, for New York. They brought that in. They benched Eli Manning early last season. They finally let Jake Browning play some. And Browning showed flashes of brilliance. He still has some way to go, but he showed that he could be a franchise quarterback. The question is, can the Giants build a good enough team around him? And New York has regressed. They were 7-9 in 2018, 6-10 this past season. And I think this is another year where it's probably going to be a lost year. The defense continues to regress. Snacks Harrison's down to a 78. He's not very good anymore. But this is really a year where you just focus on developing your young franchise quarterback in Jake Browning, building up his confidence and putting more pieces around him, maybe make a run in 2021. I think that has to be the goal for the New York Giants. Now looking at the next team, that being the Jacksonville Jaguars, and oh boy, Blake Bortles, the league MVP, was a great year for him, but the Jaguars overall, look at that, Paxton Lynch is Blake Bortles' backup. But anyways, the Jaguars overall, so they went 11-5 last year, got to the divisional round, had a 17-0 lead on the Ravens in Jacksonville. You think it's a cakewalk, they're going to easily go to the AFC Championship game, right? Well, no, they managed to blow that 17-0 lead against the Ravens, and they lost the game 20-17. So obviously, Jacksonville, they have some issues. Well, not one of them is Blake Bortles, but I think, I don't know. You know, the defense could stand to have some improvement, especially on the D-line, but Willie Gay is a stud. He'll fill in Miles Jack's used very well. Jalen Ramsey is a beast, but the rest of the secondary, not very good. And this is a Jacksonville team, though, I do think that will be atop the AFC South at season end. Now let's look at the New York Jets here. The Jets, unfortunately, crapped out. They had the number 1 overall pick in the draft, where they selected Dylan McCaffrey. And McCaffrey, the goal for this season is for him to sit and learn. They did sign Nate Sudfeld in free agency just in case McCaffrey wasn't ready. And Nate Sudfeld will get the start week 1 for the Jets in their game. I'm not sure who they're facing. I believe they're facing the Dolphins, if I recall correctly. But basically, the season is going to be all about Dylan McCaffrey sitting back and learning, and hopefully, for the Jets' sake at least, he can develop into a franchise quarterback so that they can finally get back into AFC's contention. The division's open for anyone to take, really. Dolphins are good. The Patriots have kind of regressed since Tom Brady's gone. The Bills, they're the Bills, so the AFC East is for anyone. And now here's a look at your Detroit Lions. So the Lions, after we know what their season was like, 11-5 last year, got all the way to the NFC Championship game for the first time since, I don't even know how long, what was it? 1991. And unfortunately, they had a lot of deja vu as they again lost the Redskins in Washington. This time, instead of it being 41-10, it was 31-3. So the Lions, we talked about this a few times with the Lions. This is a good roster. I think overall the defense, though, did regress a little bit. But I definitely think that the Lions have a good shot of going back to the playoffs. However, last year the Packers were down. We're going to get into the Packers in just a second. But the Packers did have a down year last year, but Detroit did sign Trayvon Mullen. He should be a big help at the quarterback position. But anyways, back to what I was saying. Packers had a down year last year. They were at 8-8, and they weren't really a factor. They're going to be a factor this year. Don't count that bad man Aaron Rodgers out. And in fact, let's take a look at this Packers roster. Aaron Rodgers, he's starting to regress just a little bit, but he is still a very, very good quarterback, and the Packers will definitely be back next season. So getting into Green Bay season, 1-7 at Lambeau last year, that pretty much sums up the year. They were 7-1 on the road, but 1-7 at home. That does not sound like the Packers whatsoever. And this is a Green Bay team that's going to be hungry. They missed the playoffs last year for the first time in 11 years since 2008. That was the last time they missed the postseason, and we're definitely going to see them respond. I think last year was basically a Super Bowl hangover after their tough loss to the Colts. The Packers, they just lost their confidence, and I don't know why. I don't know how that happened, but it did happen. But I definitely think Green Bay will be a threat in the NFC North and in the NFC in general for any team. Now, up next, we're going to take a look at the Carolina Panthers, and who had a couple of down years over the past few years. But last year, they got back on track, 10-6, made it to the divisional round where they suffered a tough loss to the Redskins. And this is a pretty good Panthers team. They're solid. They're not great, but they are solid. They have Cam Newton at quarterback, who is very good when healthy. And I think that Carolina could have done a lot better, I think, last year had Cam Newton not gotten hurt in Week 12. If Newton had stayed healthy, I think that Carolina definitely could have been maybe the 1, the 2, or even the 3 seed. Instead, they were the 4 seed. They had to go to Washington, which is tough for any team. But Carolina, they're definitely going to be a problem next season. Lions face the Panthers for the first time since 2017. They're going to be a problem, and we'll see how good they are, but I think they'll be a pretty good team. So now, next up, we're going to look at the New England Patriots. This is their second year of the post-Tom Brady era. Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback. Shane Buechele is the emergency backup in case Garoppolo doesn't work out. At halfback, the Patriots got a massive steal in Sam Majigabobber. But this is going to be a New England team. This is a big year for them. Bill Belichick, probably has maybe a couple more years left in him at this point. And if New England has another 7-9 season like they did last year, I think we're going to see Belichick have an early retirement. And I think that, in general, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get replaced. I mean, he wasn't terrible last year. He had like 23 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He wasn't bad. It wasn't terrible at all. But it just wasn't good enough. Obviously, it wasn't good enough. They went 7-9 with him. And you just have to think that maybe the Patriots want to find that, they're never going to find the next Tom Brady, but maybe they want to find a true franchise quarterback instead of a game manager like Jimmy Garoppolo for future reference. Now we're going to take a look at the Oakland Raiders here, who have underachieved like crazy. This is a team whose best record has been 7-9 since, I believe, 2015. They still have not made the playoffs. This is a team that every year you think they have a shot. Every year you hope Derek Carr takes the next step, but he never does, and the team always goes 7-9. I think the Raiders are that new team that's down for the 7-9 BS, and no, Jeff Fisher is not coaching the Raiders. I can promise you of that. Jeff Fisher is long retired by this point. But this is the Raiders team that, again, they underachieved with the talent on the roster. I mean, look at who they have. Khalil Mack, Reuben Foster, Alvin Smith, Nick Perry. They have some talented players on this team, yet they continue to underachieve. They had the worst offense in the NFL by far last season with Derek Carr at quarterback, who underachieved himself, and they got to get it together. So now we're going to take a look at the LA Rams, who bounced back after having the number 2 overall pick in 2018. And Jared Goff, he had to sign the franchise tag himself. Goff, he kind of took the next step. You could say that. 33 touchdowns, but 26 interceptions is simply ridiculous. at least for the Rams, Greg Robertson has developed into a franchise left tackle. So it's very, very good that he actually turned around his career, and that is very, very nice for the Rams. But overall, this is a team that's predicated on their defense. Rashawn Gary is a stud. Aaron Donald, we know how much of a beast he is. This is a solid Rams team overall, and I think that they're definitely going to be a threat in the NFC West. And if the Seahawks screw up, the Rams will be right there waiting on it. If the Cardinals screw up, the Rams will be right there waiting on it. So this is a solid Rams team. Now we're going to take a look at the Baltimore Ravens. We know their season last year, but look at Josh Rosen. This dude, I think he might be the best quarterback in the NFL. He really might be. He is the top-rated quarterback in Madden 21. He's a beast. He is a baller. He's a beast. And the Ravens do not regret trading up for him one bit. Look at all the receivers they surrounded Rosen with. They got five solid receivers for Josh Rosen to throw the ball to. I mean, this is a Ravens team. Normally, you think about the Ravens. When you think Ravens, you think defense. But they have really completely reinvented themselves with Dalvin Cook, Josh Rosen, Darren Carrington, Travin Durrell. This is really an offensively focused Ravens team. And I think Baltimore's going to do big things. I think if there's a team who I pick here in the Super Bowl, I think out of the AFC, I think I'm picking the Baltimore Ravens. They're my Super Bowl pick out of the AFC. I don't think I said my Super Bowl pick out of the NFC yet. I'm going to have to get to that in just a second. But here's the Washington Redskins roster. Of course, Deshaun Kaiser returns for the defending Super Bowl champions. Jay Ajayi will replace Adrian Peterson at halfback. Ryan Doherty, he's already up to an 80 overall. In Madden 21, he's a beast. Jordan Reed, tight end, beast. I mean, there's a lot of beasts on this Redskins team. There's a reason why they won the Super Bowl last year and won 13 straight games. It's a very solid team. They're able to retain a lot of people on the team. They signed Derek Wolfe in free agency. I mean, they did a lot of good things in free agency. So I think that this is a Washington team that's definitely going to be a threat. Will they go to the Super Bowl? I don't know if I want to predict that, actually. I don't think so. I do not think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. In fact, my early Super Bowl pick, just so you know it right now, Ravens, Cowboys. That's what I'm going with for my early Super Bowl projection. Hold me to that one. Now to the New Orleans Saints. Patrick Mahomes returns for his second year starting for the Saints, his fourth season overall. And for New Orleans, obviously they're going to take a step down with Drew Brees retiring. Unfortunately, they were unable to get Brees his second ring, which does suck for Drew and Saints in general. But you know, this season, again, it's about developing Patrick Mahomes. Last year, 29 touchdowns, 13 interceptions for Mahomes. Not a bad year at all. In fact, it was a pretty great year for a first-year starter. And I definitely think that Mahomes, Royce Freeman, and the slew of good Saints receivers that you saw that they have, they're definitely going to be a factor and really kind of rebuild the Saints offense. Also, look at that. Jordan Lewis, he's a baller. He is a beast. In the secondary, I think this is a Saints team that could surprise, but not one that I would predict going to the playoffs. Now let's take a look at the Seattle Seahawks here. Russell Wilson remains the quarterback, obviously. Halfback Thomas Ross, but LaShawn McCoy, he was signed. And at receiver, unfortunately, the Seahawks suffered a big blow. Tyler Lockett tore his Achilles. Ouch. And you can see the Seahawks have zero receiving depth whatsoever, so that is a massive loss for Seattle, and that might be the loss that I think gives the Rams and the Cardinals just enough to put them over the edge for that NFC West. I really do. I think not having Tyler Lockett, combined with the fact that this is a Seahawks team that messed around a ton last season, they had a lot of games where they were screwing around, that they did not look like that same Seahawks team that went to, what was it, four Super Bowls in 5 years. They did not look like that same Seahawks team. You can tell. Cam Chancellor is really regressed, which is not good for Seattle. Now taking a look at the Steelers, Big Ben will enter the season as the starter, probably his last season at quarterback. Le'Veon Bell, what a shocker. He's injured again for the first 3 games. And if you didn't know, Le'Veon Bell literally consistently gets injured every single season. Like over the past 5 or so years, he's been injured. And so is LJ Scott. So the Steelers are pretty screwed at halfback. At receiver, Martavis Bryant mysteriously disappeared. I have no idea where he is. Probably, I don't know what he's doing, but he retired from the NFL apparently. So the Steelers are down to as the receivers you saw on the screen. But anyways, let's get into the Steelers recap. They were what, 10-6 last season, suffered a tough loss to the Texans. This is Big Ben's final run, and you gotta hope that Pittsburgh has what it takes to get Big Ben just that one last ring before he retires, because Jacob Eason is ready to take over, as you can see. Now let's take a look at the Houston Texans, and for Houston, finally, they have appeared to have found their franchise quarterback in Sam Darnold. That is really, really good for the Texans, because DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller, these guys were growing impatient. They really wanted that franchise quarterback. Brock Osweiler was garbage. Alex Smith was a stopgap, but Sam Darnold looks like the truth. And that is very good for Houston. He's going to be entering his second season. And I think that Houston, again, they made the playoffs last year. I think they can make it again. And I think they'll actually face the Ravens in the AFC title game. I'm calling you right now, a Rosen-Darnold matchup in the AFC Championship game. We're definitely going to see a changing of the guard in the AFC over the next couple of years as guys like Rivers and Roethlisberger retire and guys like Rosen and Darnold take their place. We're definitely going to see an interesting change in the AFC North. I mean, the AFC in general. Now let's look at the Tennessee Titans. Underwhelming year for them last year. They were 5-11. It seems like Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston, their team successes are tied at the hip, really, when it comes to these two teams. Both teams were 5-11 last year, and mostly it was because Marcus Mariota, he missed, like the last half of the season. This is a team that went to the AFC title game in 2018. This is a very talented team. They were one play away from going to overtime in that AFC title game and possibly having a shot at getting into Super Bowl 53. But unfortunately, their defense just quit and let Theo Riddick run for a 75-yard touchdown. But that's not important right now. What is important is my outlook on the Titans currently. My outlook is not good. I think that the Titans are back to maybe having another 7-9, 8-8 season. Really, that's the best I can see for this team. Things do not look good for them going forward. I think they're kind of stagnant. And now for the final team, the Minnesota Vikings. Another 8-8 season for them. They're another team that's basically mediocre, as Mitch Trubisky is going to miss the first 7 weeks of the year with a broken collarbone. But that doesn't really matter much. He's a backup anyways. But the Vikings are a team mired in mediocrity. Every year it seems like they're 7-9, 8-8 or whatever, except for 2018 where they were 3-13, and unfortunately for them, they did not replace Teddy Bridgewater. And I don't know why they didn't, because Teddy Bridgewater, he did have a great year last season, probably finally showing that he could be a franchise quarterback at the NFL level. I would not tie my wagons to him long term. I think the Vikings again are going to have another mediocre season, 7-9, 8-8 type season. But as you can see, the rest of the Vikings roster on your way out. I hope you guys enjoyed the 2020 NFL preview, and leave your Super Bowl predictions in the comments below. Who do you think will be matching up in Super Bowl 55?